Welcome, my name is Stephanie for Découvert, and thank you for joining me on this Christmas shadow box tutorial. This gorgeous Christmas project is created almost entirely out of paper. You could use white or colored LEDs to customize it or pattern cardstock for the frame. It would make an amazing Christmas gift for that special someone. The SVG files and list of supplies are available at my website, www.decouvert.com. This is a really fun project, so let's get started. Here we have our pieces for the 3D shadow box. You will have cut 2 long pieces marked with 2 slashes, and you'll have cut 2 pieces marked with 1 slash on the tab here, you'll notice. And then what you'll do is you will fold them in a valley fold up the sides, and then a mountain fold at this tab here. And then you will go ahead and you will glue them long to short, long to short. And you'll just glue them here, making sure to line up the score line with this here, with the end of the other piece. Make sure that it's all lined up. And then of course, when you're gluing it, and as you're gluing it, making sure that it makes a nice, clean corner here, so that it's able to fold easily downwards. Okay. And then once you've glued all of those, we will go on to the next step. Here, I've completed gluing the inner sides, making sure that everything's lined up and the corners are crisp. Then you're going to take one of your frame pieces. You have 2 of these. You're going to take one of these and you're going to glue these tabs down to this frame, to the inner portion of the frame, making sure to line up the corners and line up the sides. You can turn it around and double check that everything is aligning properly as you glue. And I would say that the best thing would be to glue one side at a time, line it up, making sure that it's aligned here, and then off to the next and the next and the next. And once you've done that, we'll go off to the next step. I have completed gluing the inner bands to our frame. As you can see, everything is lined up. So now we will be gluing our outer bands to the frame. So you'll have these pieces here. You'll have 2 pieces marked with 3 slashes on the tab, and you'll have some longer pieces marked with a square on the tab. So then what you'll do, you'll go ahead and along the score line, you will fold them in a valley fold on each score line, tabs included. And then you will go ahead and you will fold them short to long, short to long. And one difference is that you will notice, instead of gluing them together with this band on the outside, we're gluing it with the band on the inside, like so. And you'll make sure that it's lined up again, lined up with the score line here on the inside. Okay, so I've completed gluing the outer bands together. Just make sure that you leave them open. Okay, so you leave one tab open. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your frame and you're going to line up each side on the score line against the edge of the frame. And you're going to glue all the way around here. So just make sure that it's, you can see here, that you're lining up the score line, making sure that your corners are lined up, and just go all the way around and carefully glue and do one side at a time. Don't try to do all the sides at once. Okay, so here we have our frame. I've gone ahead and I put the skinny frame onto this side of our box, and now I'm going to be adding the identical frame the other one we have, and glue it down on this side. Now what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that you see you can sort of tuck this sort of seam allowance, if you want to call it that, in underneath the outside tab. Just sort of tuck it in there, so it just makes it a bit easier for when you're trying to adjust it as you're gluing it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to, now there's many ways of approaching this, but the idea is that you want to make sure that everything, as I was saying before, everything is lined up. These inside corners, the outside corners, the edges here, make sure that this is all lined up. You could, one way of doing it would be to place your frame like this, and then to go ahead, you could put this down, and you could line it up like so, and making sure that the edge of your frame is lined up against the score line. You could glue it down like this, and then go ahead so that at least your starting point is completely accurate, or you could come at it from this way and just glue the outside first and then go into the inside, making sure that these edges here are lined up with that score line cornered, that edge as well, and making sure that these inner corners are all lined up. So you will go ahead and you will do this to every side, obviously, but maybe what you should do is just do it one side at a time, let it dry, then off to the next. You may even want to, glue this side and then the side opposite it, just to make sure that everything is in place, and then go ahead and do these sides. So there's many ways to approach this. You take a look and see what works best for you, but really take your time with it, making sure that the placement is correct and all should fall into a place. As we were discussing before, there are many different methods to gluing this frame to the sides. What I've done, and what seems to be working for me, is I've gone ahead and I've glued the outer tab to the outer frame here. I let that dry, and then I've gone to the outer frame here, done the same thing. Stick my fingers in here, trying to make sure that it's nicely set. And then I've gone to the shorter side, done the same thing, making sure that my edges are flush with the sides, my corners are lined up, and then I'll wait for it to dry and then go on to the next one. I mean, definitely wait for it to dry because it does shift, and you don't want to be gluing one side and have the other one shift as you're doing it. So then what I'll do is I will come in here and I will just go in and put some glue in here. You can see this. I'm putting some glue in here. And making sure that I have enough. I'm going to get glue, and I'm lining up this corner here. I got a bit too much glue here, but we just sort of try to wipe it off, and then slowly make our way, and wiping as we go. You can see it's starting to, it sets pretty fast, this glue, so you gotta work a bit fast so it doesn't come away from you. Okay, I'm just gonna run, make sure that my everything is set up nicely here. Got this corner that's trying to come away from me. It's going to hold that down a bit. Now I was a bit messy in my application of the glue on this. I mean, don't worry. You really, it's worry about the outside here because that's what's going to be showing. This here is not going to be showing because we're going to have our back on. Okay, so I finished gluing the other skinny frame to the sides, to the inner side. I went in and, you know, making sure that I was lining up this edge here, making sure that this was aligned properly. The score line was aligned with the inner frame. And I went in here and went in here with glue and just slowly made my way, held it down to let it dry, and then continued along. I mean, you could just run your glue around the tab and then hold it down, but sometimes it's a little bit easier to just go a little bit at a time, making sure that all your corners and edges are lined up. And not to worry too much about, you know, the glue that's on the frame itself, because that's going to be covered up by your outer frame. So this you're going to be gluing down. This is a thicker frame, you'll notice. It has a lip to it so that when you put your layers in, they won't come poking out from the back. So it's just to prevent them from falling out the front. So there you go. So you'll be gluing that down, aligning the corners, aligning the edges, making sure that it's all aligned, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so I've finished gluing our outer frame to the shadow box. Just a little hint or tip is if you're finding that there are some corners or edges that have lifted, what you can do is sometimes it's difficult to get the nozzle into those little crevices here, is that you can just put a little bit of glue on here, and then what you'll do is you'll just kind of tuck this in here in between the crevices and just stick a little bit of glue in there and just hold it down. Of course, I was a bit messy with my application, so but I'm sure yours will be neater than mine because I'm just trying to do this quick for the video. Okay, so here I've gone ahead, I've cut out all of the layers for my project, including the layers in vellum. So we should have about 11 layers and our vellum pieces cut. So I just wanted to go over with you what we're going to do with these layers. First, what we're going to do is on this layer, which is the ToyWorks layer. This is layer 4. You will be putting this piece of vellum, this piece here, in behind this layer, like so. And you'll just carefully glue, line it up with the sides, and carefully glue it to the back of layer 4. And then what you will do is you'll take this layer, this is the chimney piece, chimney vellum, and just tuck it in behind here. This is just to give the effect of snow. So this is what we're using the vellum for. And then over here we have this piece here. This will be glued behind here. So you'll tuck this in and you'll glue that behind the house. And then here, this piece here, you will glue behind the ToyWorks. So you'll just tuck it in like so, making sure to line it up with your icicles, and then glue that down. And then once you've glued all of that, make sure to let it dry. Then what you can do is this is our layer 11. So this is the very back. You'll notice the stars and everything. So what you'll do is you can do it either one of two ways. You can go ahead and start poking holes here for your stars. So just using a needle like this and maybe a thinner needle. So this is like a very heavy upholstery needle, or you could use a thinner needle. And you'll just go around and you'll make a few more stars. Your file has some stars already cut, but this is just add the finer stars in there. So just go ahead and poke holes through here to create your stars. And if you forget to do this, that's okay, because if you put, you can still do it once the vellum is on as well. You'll just have brighter stars. It's up to you. And then what you'll do is you glue this back layer of vellum behind your background, behind this layer 11. So don't forget that. And then we have our tree vellum. This is quite detailed. I recommend using a heavier duty vellum because this is a very, very thin vellum, so it rips up it gets ripped up a bit when it's under the cutting machine. So here we have our layer 2 with the Christmas tree and the elf. I've gone and wired this up. This is completely up to you, completely optional. I will show you how to do this later. But otherwise, what you'll do is, if you don't want to have the lights here, you will line this up in the back and glue it down to the back of your tree. Okay, so it just creates a little bit more play, light and shadow there. But again, you can go ahead and wire this up if you like. I'll show this to you later. Okay, I just finished adding all the vellum to the back of my layer 4, the Toy Works layer. And you can just see that I've glued this down. I've aligned them up, making sure to line them up with the icicles. Just line up the chimney there. If some pokes through, you can always go in with your X-Acto and just trim a little bit if it's coming through. But just line it all up. I did not mention before, but I should mention it, is that when you're cutting this file, just pay special attention to, these areas here, they're quite delicate. Just pay attention when you're weeding that you take your time with it, especially this area here. It's okay because it's being solidified with the vellum in the back. So, but just be aware of that. And so here I've added the vellum to the back, like I was saying before. I put in all the stars, and if you can see that. But and we don't need stars behind here because of course we have our buildings, so that's covering up that area. So we just need the stars where, obviously where the night sky is showing. I'm cutting the spacers, so they're about 3/16 wide, and I'll give you the exact dimensions later. Actually, I'll put them right up here. So, and how many you have to cut. But I just wanted to go over with you how to cut these. Now you're going to need a really sharp blade because you'll have so much trouble otherwise. It'll just tear through it and it won't look very neat. And even though these are hidden, it's just nice to keep things nice and neat too. So as best you can. So I just, I with my ruler, I just measured out 3/16. And then the length that I need for the top and the bottom spacer. And so, just going over this, you could run against your blade and go from, each one like so. But I find it a bit easier going like across here. And sometimes you gotta go over it twice. There you go, just to make sure. I'm at a kind of an awkward angle, but so if you just go along here and a lot of pressure using a sharp blade, and you should be able to cut out all the pieces that you need relatively easily. Now we're going to be adding the foam spacers to each layer. Not every single layer, but this is what we're going to be doing, is we're going to be adding these foam spacers here and gluing them down like so. So you'll be doing that to every single layer except for these layers here. So you won't do this to no foam on layer 1, no foam on layer 7, no foam on layer 9. They do not require the foam spacers just because they're just backing layers. And this, of course, is the front layer. That's, you know, it's going to be going right directly behind the front frame. So, okay, so we'll just carry on. So here we have our ToyWorks layers. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to place this one with the vellum in front, and then you're going to add a little bit of glue. See this sort of area right here? And right here, we just want to tack this area down. Just a bit of glue here and a bit of glue here. We don't want to glue the entire layers together, both layers together, just simply because we just want to have a bit of depth here where you see the toys and sort of behind the houses and where the elves are and the tree is poking through. So we just want to tack it in this area here. So you'll just add a little bit of glue here, and then you'll just hold it down and just tack this area here. So that is for those layers. That's for the ToyWorks layers. You'll do that. And then for these layers here, the Santa and his sleigh layer, you will just glue these down, making sure you don't get too much excess glue poking through. You'll just glue these ones together. You could do that prior to putting the foam on. It might be a little bit easier. So you'll glue those two layers together. And then the far off house here, which is layer 9, is going to go behind this one here. And then you're going to, again, glue that in place. And there you go. And you'll notice that's why you don't have any foam behind those layers there. You don't have the foam spacer. It's just so that you can see the detail of the houses there. Okay, so off to the next. Okay, so here we have our lantern layer and our Christmas tree layer. And what I'm doing is I'm adding these micro LED lights, these micro dot lights behind the lantern and the tree. So what you're going to do is you're going to place about your 12th light from the battery pack. So the 12th light, you're going to make sure that it's behind the lantern right here, and you're going to sort of run a loop. Make sure not to bend it too much because you might snap the wire, and just run it down behind, and then train the wires to come down here. Now this is the wire that's leading to your battery pack. And the rest of the lights are going to go behind your tree here. So you're going to run your lights. You're going to make sure that the last light is at the star. So do make sure that the last light of your light string is behind the star, and then you're going to, whatever excess you have, you're going to be zigzagging it behind the tree, being careful that there's not too many wires poking out that you can see through the front. But what I've done is I've zigzagged it, and then I've come up and down in places. That's to solidify the tree vertically, just to make sure that it doesn't flop over or flop to the back, which it could have the tendency to do. So you're going to be zigzagging the excess and then running up and down and taping them down as you go. So that's one option you have. Now you could, alternatively, is you could put this vellum behind the tree. That is the other option. So depending on how, you don't need to put these lights, you could put all your lights behind in your back layer. It looks really beautiful that way too. But if you want to have a few more lights, you can do it this way. You could also add colored lights too. Those are really pretty, but you might not be able to put them onto the lantern. But, you know, that could be an option for you as well. So there you go. That's how you put the lights on. Okay, so we have the Christmas tree layer and the lantern layer. Now we did already put tape behind here, but I just wanted to add a little tip. So if you're having trouble with the wires and the wires are sort of poking up or whatever, what you can do is you can take a little bit of hot glue and just dab it here on the tree. I mean, we've already done this here on the lantern, but you can go ahead and if you see little bits, use it sparingly, don't use too much. And, you know, I put a little bit here just to solidify it to make sure that those wires are staying in place and aren't shifting too much. If you find that it's too fiddly to deal with two layers sort of shifting, you can always glue the lantern layer to the tree layer. But at that point, you want to really make sure that those lights are all the way you like it and are all set up properly. And also take a look and see how your tree is standing. Make sure that it's not flip-flopping too much to the back. Just set it straight up and see if your tree is standing up straight. If that's all is okay, then yes, you can go ahead and perhaps glue these two together if you like. You could put them in separately, but that is up to you. But, you know, as you can see here, there's this little bit here. I might just go in and see that there's a little, and I'll just put a little dot of glue right there. Trying to make sure that I don't have too many little spider webs coming out. And just hold it down. Oops. And that should hold the wires into place. Okay, so now we'll put them in the box. Okay, so we finished gluing the frame to the box, and now what we're going to be doing, we're going to flip it around and we're going to start adding our layers. So here's our first layer. I did add some foam. I know I mentioned not to add some foam earlier, but you can. It's optional if you want to have more depth. I've decided in this case that I'm going to add the foam to the front of the piece. So we've put it foam face down and just tuck it in here. There should be a bit of ease in there. Now be careful with the layers that have the wires. Okay, so be wary of those because they are a bit fiddly. So you just want to put them in carefully because they're kind of going to go in together. And you might have to just give it a little push. They fit nice and snug in there. Okay, and just making sure that your wire over here is coming out the corner there. And then we have our two layers here. The ToyWorks layer and the back of the ToyWorks layer, which are glued at this junction here, as you can recall. So these two are coming in. Okay, and then we have our Santa layer and the backing layer for this. So this one's going to go in like so. And just carefully put them in, watching your wire as you go. And then we have our smaller house. This will go in. And then we have Santa's castle. Again, foam side down. Being wary of that wire. And then, of course, our backing layer with our stars. Make sure you've done all your stars. Okay. So we have this sort of tucked in here. I'm going to turn this around and see how my Christmas tree is looking. I'm just going to close these lights here so you can see a bit better. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I might just kind of adjust my tree a little bit so it's not bending too far to the back, making sure that it's all nicely glued and taped down. All the lights are nicely taped down. Okay, so I like the way that looks. So I'm going to just turn it around. I'll turn back my light. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our spacers. You should have four more left. And you're going to be gluing these into place, gluing them to the sides of your box, paper to paper. And this is just to hold the layers to the front so they don't sink back to the back when you have it set up. So we'll be off to the next step, which will be adding the lights to the back of the frame. Okay. Okay, so here is the battery compartment. So I have gone ahead and folded on the score lines all towards the inside. And what we're going to do is going to glue the tabs. Just a bit of glue here. And oops, I'm going to put a bit too much there, but try to get your corners nice and crisp. And just hold it for a little bit. And then, if you like, once that is glued down inside here, then you could go ahead and glue in this little corner here. Just to solidify. And again here. Down here. It's just to solidify it. Okay. So this is going to glue this down onto the back of our frame. Okay, so here I have the back of our shadow box, and I've lined it up against the bottom edge of my shadow box. I don't know if you can see that here. And what I'm doing is I'm just taking those lights, the lights that were in the front on our Christmas tree. You can see them here. I am just taking this wire that's running out, and I've just sort of snaked it around here. I did make sure that the placement for my battery pack, that I have enough wire to be able to place it behind, because it's going to be sticking behind here. So it's going to be going on to my shadow box here. So I just wanted to make sure that I have enough wire left over for the battery pack to be able to stick it to the back. So I've gone ahead, I've gone around, I've just taken tape and I'm just taping around these edges here. Now you can make sure that when you're doing this that you're leaving about a 3/4 inch frame around here, or sorry, clearance around here, so that you don't end up putting it in the way of where you're going to be gluing it to the back of your frame. So you just want this area free of wires and lights so that you have an area to glue this to the back of your box. And then what we're going to be doing is then we are going to be adding in these lights. These are heavier lights that I'm going to be adding to. There's a package of 20 LEDs. I've used these LEDs. I've used these LEDs. These are 20 LED light indoor pure white I've used in this case. I like the pure white. I like the color that it gives off, especially for the snow. These are a warmer light, but again, it's up to you what color or shade you want to use for your lights. So I'm going to be doing the same thing here. I'm going to be making sure that my battery pack that I've got enough clearance for my battery pack, and I'm going to go around and I'm going to stick these down with my tape. Just taping as I go, taping them down, trying to make them nice and neat. And then every once in a while, I'll close this up and I'll just check the front to see how I like the placement of the lights. In some areas you may want to be lit up more, in which case, you add more lights in that area. Again, you can use 40 LEDs instead of 20 LEDs if you want it lit up a bit more. So that's an option as well. So just continue on with that, making sure that you have this clearance for your battery pack. You're running it out this little triangle that's been cut out of the side. Make sure that you have enough wire here to be able to stick it on to the back of your shadow box. Okay, so we'll carry on with that, and we'll see you in the next step. Okay, so I have gone ahead and I've put the rest of my lights onto the back of the shadow box. Now you can see I've sort of snaked them around. I've tried to even it out to make sure that I've got lights everywhere. And every once in a while I close it up and I check the front to see how my placement is going. And just make sure that you don't have any lights that are kind of sticking up here that are too close to the paper backing, because they'll show up as like sort of a hot spot and they'll look a bit strange. So here I'll tape this one down a bit because it's kind of poking out. And you'll just keep going like that. And then once you're happy with your placement, you are going to be gluing this back. Be careful of your lights. And you'll be gluing this down all around, making sure you don't glue down these lights here. We don't want to glue this area here. We just want to glue these sides here. We want to keep this area sort of open. This area here open. And once you've closed that up and you're happy with how everything is going, then you're going to be putting your lights here. You're going to be tucking these wires in, and you're going to put your lights there. And then what you'll do is you'll use this self-adhesive Velcro. You'll just cut a strip of that fits your battery pack, and just stick it on here, because you want to make the area that where you have access to your batteries. You want to make sure that this is the side that you have up. So I'll just turn these over. And then you'll just stick this to the back and stick them on to your shadow box. Now if you're finding, if you are using battery packs, very heavy battery packs, let's say you have 2 battery packs that have 3 batteries each, you may want to cut another piece of the back layer and glue them together, So to make this, to solidify the back, or just get a heavier cardstock, a heavier cover stock for the back, just so it's not pulling too much. So if you do find you want to do that, you can go ahead. That might just, you know, just make it a little bit more, that might just solidify that area a bit more. Okay, so then we can sort of, I'm going to turn off these lights. Okay, so I just want to do a little bit of a reveal for you and just take a look at what we've done so far. I'm just moving the batteries out of the way. Of course, my box is not glued shut, so it's kind of silly of me to do this right now, but I wanted to show you where we're at. Isn't that pretty? So again, you can use different colored light. You could use different colored paper or a pattern paper for your frame if you want to do something a little bit different. That would be really nice. So this is our project and it's complete. Now, if you really like these projects and you'd like to see more, please subscribe to my channel. I'll be coming out with more projects all of the time. Or check out my website. I also have the postings there along with more descriptions. But yes, again, thank you for joining me on this Christmas shadow box tutorial, and I hope to craft with you very soon. Thanks.